Entertainment Tonight, the most watched entertainment news program in the world.
Michael Jackson.
Janet Jackson.
What have you done for me lately?
If you think you've seen it all, think again.
The performance not seen in 30 years. The rare interview with Michael as a teenager.
But sometimes Randy just goes in my closet and just takes my stuff out.
The secret prayer ritual caught on tape.
Janet's secret marriage, the piercings, and her battle with depression.
This just kind of came crashing down on me.
The health scares.
You okay, Mr. Jackson? You want to take a break?
My mouth hurts.
Michael, the romantic.
Go off somewhere for a lifetime, be happy, married.
And young Michael's most embarrassing moments.
If we go out together and a bunch of girls start following me, let's hear what you say to them.
Janet as a young vixen.
Come here, little boy.
And Michael in trouble.
Don't treat me like a criminal.
On the road with the Jacksons for 30 years of hits. Backstage, behind the scenes, the Jacksons exposed. The Jacksons under a microscope. Hi, everybody. I'm Jan Carl.
And I'm Mark Steinitz. First, there was Michael and allegations of child molestation. Now comes Sister Janet and her Super Bowl shocker.
But if you think what she did during the halftime show was surprising, think again.
Because it turns out that just like her brother, Janet is no stranger to controversy.
My decision to change the Super Bowl performance was actually made after the final rehearsal.
The fallout from Janet's Super Bowl stunt was fast and furious, affecting all the major networks. ABC will impose a 5-second delay in the Oscar telecast so that offensive material can be edited out. NBC removed a scene in Thursday's ER that showed an elderly patient's bare breast. Janet's appearance at this weekend's Grammy Awards was scratched.
MTV, CBS, the NFL had no knowledge of this whatsoever. And unfortunately, the whole thing went wrong in the end. I am really sorry if I offended anyone. That was truly not my intention.
A source tells ET that CBS confiscated all the tapes from MTV of Janet and Justin's rehearsal for the network's own internal investigation. This coming week, it is expected that Janet and all parties will go to Washington for hearings at the FCC.
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated at the whole situation. I'm frustrated that my character is being questioned. And the fact of the matter is, you know, I've had a good year, a really good year, especially with my music. And I mean, even me personally, I don't feel like I need publicity like this. And I wouldn't want to be involved with a stunt, especially something of this magnitude.
Initially, both stars called the incident a, quote, wardrobe malfunction. And during the game, Justin was seen smooching with Cameron Diaz in the stands. But as the debate raged through the week, Justin was clearly a man who felt he had been duped.
Now, I was under the impression that what was going to be revealed in the costume reveal was a red brassiere, a bustier, went on stage, was in the moment, and when what happened, I mean, I was completely shocked and appalled, and all I could say was, oh my God, oh my God.
I spoke with both Janet's dad and her brother Jermaine. They defended her performance and their family.
What was her response to it? I mean, obviously this thing took off right away.
Do you know, right now it's pick on the Jacksons, so let it be.
We're Jacksons. Everybody criticize us. No problem. We're used to it.
I would someday love to get married and have kids. I want a big family. A big family like mine. I don't know if I could have that many. My mother did, but I'd like to try.
Janet was a fresh-faced 16-year-old when she did her first ET interview in 1983.
I feel that it's been a lot easier for me in the business since my last name is Jackson. I feel that it would have been a lot harder for me to just start. Oh, it would have been so hard for me. That's the way I really feel about it. But by me having that last name and knowing a lot of the people in the business already, it's been very easy.
But that young lady grew up to be a provocative woman and entertainer. Janet's had her navel pierced, and during the Super Bowl flashing, she was sporting a nipple-piercing shield. It's a far cry from the chubby-cheeked 11-year-old who first starred on Good Times and followed that with a stint on Different Strokes and Fame.
Well, I wanted to go to college, but my father wanted me to do Fame, so I went ahead and did that. I went to study business law. I still thought that I would be in the industry in some way, but I never thought that it would become what it has.
Right.
An 18-year-old Janet rebelled against her father's reported iron-fisted domination by eloping with R&B singer James DeBarge. She told E.T. about the ill-fated romance in 1990 while promoting her multi-platinum album, Rhythm Nation.
We were married for a year, and it just didn't work out. A lot of things happened in my life at that point. And that's when I actually sat down with myself and asked myself, what do you want out of life? What do you want to do? And I said, I want to sing, and I want to accomplish this, and this, and that's when I did the Control album. I'm not bitter at all.
Her parents were said to have forced the annulment.
I can honestly say that I've been in love twice in my life, and they were both friends of mine before we actually started seeing each other, so those were the James and Renee.
Renee Elizondo Jr. was there for Janet when her first marriage crumbled. She secretly married him in 1991, but the privacy was shattered when Renee filed for divorce in May of 2000.
It's still ongoing. It's been 3 years. It's a pain in the butt, but you have to go through it. I just hate that things like this have to happen. Because, at least I wanted to be friends, and you don't talk, and that gets kind of funky, and it can be ugly. And I hate all that stuff.
The suit was reportedly settled for an undisclosed sum. Janet's latest love is Jermaine Dupri. But as for another march down the aisle as recently as 2 years ago, it didn't seem likely.
No. I'm not very good at it, I don't think.
Janet is no stranger to adversity, acknowledging to Bob some of her deepest, darkest fears and challenges.
I had read one time that you had said that you had suffered from depression.
It had a lot to do with, my childhood and growing up and things like that. I guess just kind of came crashing down on me, things that I always suppressed through my years of growing up. And finally, it just was too much and you couldn't suppress it anymore.
Janet said she retreated to the desert, spending time with an amiable cowboy.
He's an older man, very wise, and he used to be in the business, so he understood where I was coming from.
After the Super Bowl debacle, some wonder if she couldn't use a little more friendly advice. But longtime friend and colleague Paula Abdul believes Janet will weather all the criticism.
I think she's a very strong girl, and I think she is willing to withstand what's about to happen.
Coming up next, Michael Jackson, the early years.
Young Michael and one of his earliest displays of dance. His hopes for true love.
To find the right person and to go off somewhere for a lifetime, be happy married, I guess.
The secret backstage prayer ritual. The baby dangling.
If it was up to me, he wouldn't have those babies now.
Macaulay, Madonna, Brooke, and the candid moments with his friends. And Janet, years before this, there was this.
Come here, little boy.
As Entertainment Tonight examines the Jacksons exposed. Welcome back to Entertainment Tonight as we look at the Jacksons exposed.
Michael Jackson has certainly had his share of headlines. He's been in the spotlight for more than 30 years. But just when you thought you knew everything about Michael, we've uncovered rare footage and interviews with the star that shed new light on his amazing life. It was 1971. 13-year-old Michael and his brothers were on top of the world. The Jackson 5 had already notched 4 #1 hits, including this one, The Love You Save. Rolling Stone magazine's Anthony DeCurtis remembers that while all of the brothers clearly had talent, it was Michael who stood out.
Michael
from the very start, was a superstar. You know, on stage with the Jackson 5, you know, you just couldn't take your eyes off Michael, and he was a delight.
A year later, Michael made an appearance on The Dating Game, reruns of which can still be seen on the Game Show Network.
He's the lead singer and the youngest member of the Jackson 5. He loves sketching and drawing, playing basketball and candy and bubble gum. Please join me in a special dating game welcome for a fine young man, Michael Jackson.
He opened the show with Rockin' Robin from his first solo album. And then sat down to question his 3 potential dates.
Number 1, whenever I go out, girls are always following me. If we go out together and a bunch of girls start following me, let's hear what you say to them to make them go away.
Get away from him. He's mine, not yours.
So who did he choose?
Number 1.
Number 1. All right.
From before he could remember, Michael was a star, and his legendary dance skills were right there from the beginning, too. In this performance on The Mike Douglas Show in 1977, Michael showed off some of that star quality that made him so beloved. On the show, Michael also told the story of how the Jackson 5 was first discovered by Diana Ross.
We did this show, and she liked it very much, and she came backstage and told us how much she liked it, and from there on...
How soon after that were you recording?
Oh, about 3 weeks.
Longtime LA DJ Charlie Tuna remembers when Michael dropped by his studio for a visit.
He came over just all by himself. No bodyguards, no entourage or anything else. He was a teenager, about 15, 16 years old. He was just one of these kids where, typical teenager, giggled a lot during the interview. I asked him one time, I said, what would you be doing if you couldn't be a pop star? He said, I think I'd be running track.
But the price of fame was high. Michael missed out on the joys of a normal childhood. He and his brothers were driven hard to succeed by their father. Allegations surfaced later that Joseph Jackson beat his children, with Michael receiving the brunt of his abuse.
Michael was in a very funny situation because on the one hand, he was an abused child. On the other hand, he was a superstar, so that in a sense, you know, Joseph could beat Michael as much as he wanted, but his whole livelihood was dependent on Michael.
Michael would end up selling over 100 million albums as a member of the Jackson 5. In 1989, E.T. was with Michael as he returned to his 6th grade elementary school, one of the few places in his life he was able to just be a kid.
He was a beautiful child, very sensitive, kind. I was not hip enough to really know what he was involved in at the time.
We must all never forget that the children are our future, and without them, mankind would become extinct.
A new auditorium was unveiled that day in Michael's honor, but in the wake of the latest charges, they have since covered his name. Despite the problems that would plague him later in life, his days spent with the Jackson 5 made an unforgettable mark on rock and roll history.
Coming up next, Michael in the 80s.
From Beat It to We Are the World, we are on the road with Michael and the kind of backstage access you can only get on ET.
Sorry, I gotta take 5 minutes. Mary? Maybe.
Later, Bubbles the Chimp, what Lisa Marie says about their bizarre marriage, and one of Janet's earliest performances.
Hey!
As Entertainment Tonight examines the Jacksons Exposed.
Welcome back to Entertainment Tonight as we look at the Jacksons Exposed. The 1980s will be remembered as the decade Michael became the king of pop.
With hit after hit, The Moonwalk, We Are the World, it was Michael's decade to shine. He was constantly on the road, and E.T. was with him every step of the way. His hopes for true love.
To find the right person and to go off somewhere for a lifetime, be happy married, I guess.
His enduring loneliness.
When I'm not on stage, I'm not as happy, and everything seems to be foreign to me or new. And I'm just now beginning to enjoy friendship, which is new for me.
His dreams for the future.
I want to entertain people, bring some type of joy, escapism, magic to the world, and I feel that's what I'm here to do. I'm honored to have the job.
In the 80s, fans hung on Michael's every whispered word because he enjoyed staggering success. Thriller, released in 1982, became the best-selling album of all time, with 51 million copies sold around the world. Pepsi paid him then an unheard of $10 million for his endorsement.
I wanted something that the whole world could see.
With We Are the World in 1985, Jackson won a Grammy and earned humanitarian status.
Does good work, what we call the points of light concept.
1987's Bad, with its record-breaking world tour, sold nearly 7 million copies within 1 week of its worldwide release.
Sorry, I gotta take 5 minutes. Mary? Mary.
During this whirlwind, he always had time for E.T., as Mary Hart literally held his hand backstage, calming him.
I think it's got to be one of the most incredible feelings in the world. To know it's your show and just to feel there's a whole excitement and frenzy about it.
Mary even joined the Jackson pre-concert prayer circle, which evolved into a good old-fashioned yell. These adoring fans never saw what our ET cameras captured. We shadowed Michael as he created his massive hit, Beat It. Jackson gave us unprecedented access to the filming and editing sessions. Much of the time, he seems disinterested, even reading a newspaper. But he is aware of each split-second sound, and he personally okays barely perceived background sound effects.
You still need some yells once they jump.
Clearly at the top of his career, Michael still seemed discontented.
Eventually, I want to do film. That's what my dream is, to do film as well as song, to integrate them together. Realism, nothing that's plastic. Real feeling and belief. That's what I understand. Bring the world together through love, peace, joy, for men to live together. That's the whole thing.
Before the shroud of secrecy enveloped him, Michael lived a sometimes open public life. When the play Dreamgirls premiered in Los Angeles, he gave E.T. his review.
It's the most incredible play I've ever seen. It's brilliant. Everybody should see it.
But for Michael Jackson in the 80s, there was a growing sense of how isolated his life had always been.
I was raised on stage, and I'm happy on stage. I can sleep on stage. When I'm off, it's another story. It's hard to relate to people in everyday life. I'm comfortable on stage in front of thousands of people.
That love of performing took Michael around the globe. For 1987's Bad World Tour, he even brought along one of his most talked-about companions, Bubbles the Chimp. He was becoming a true legend, and other stars sought him out. Billy Joel and Christy Brinkley brought their daughter Alexa to a sound check and visited backstage.
Michael, all right? She can't believe it.
But there was no denying Michael was gaining his reputation as an eccentric. Quincy Jones, who produced both Thriller and Bad, defended his friend against charges that he was out of touch with the real world.
Many times he puts on disguises, and goes out everywhere. People don't even know he's there. I know my daughter, they take little adventures, and they could run away from all the bodyguards, and they go off and do their thing. The Beverly Center, everybody freaks out, and they're having a ball over there, just looking at some little stupid toys or somewhere. Same when we shot the Bad video, we went up in 122nd Street, for hours and hours and hours, and sneak off and go to these little restaurants, and he's connected.
Quincy even had kind words for Bubbles.
He's like a person, because he's real playful, and he loves to get in trouble. He's mischievous, He's wild. I mean, he eats out of a spoon just like a person. Doesn't mess up his lips. A real personality.
Michael, how do you like your Australian fans?
I love them.
1987's Bad Tour lasted well into 1988, and Michael's joy was apparent. E.T. saw him play fighting with his manager and high-fiving his band. He even gave then unknown Sheryl Crow a few moments in the spotlight.
Plus, she gets to hug Michael. That's right.
But slowly, Michael began his retreat into the shadows. His public appearances became shorter and shorter. When LA named November of '88 as Michael Jackson Month, he barely said a word.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
And eventually, the man who blazed through the decade became a camera-shy recluse who seemed to repeat the same speech nearly every time he spoke in public.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored, very thankful. I love you all. Thank you.
Coming up next, Michael in trouble.
Was a neighbor, so she ran into the bed.